Malcolm Turnbull has fired back at Donald Trump after the US president called the former PM a weak and ineffective leader in a social media post. That came after comments Mr Turnbull made earlier about Mr Trump, suggesting he would be no match for China's leader. He doubled down last night on the ABC.
Wants people to suck up to him and to be sycophantic. The fact is, I stood up to Trump and got him to do things he didn't want to do because I wasn't being bullied by him.
For more, let's bring in Opposition Leader Peter Dutton live in Dayborough, northwest of Brisbane. Good morning to you, Mr Dutton. We are only days away
Morning, Nat.
before those steel and aluminium tariffs kick in. We're trying to get an exemption. Are you worried Malcolm Turnbull has jeopardised our negotiations with the US?
Well, Nat, obviously the priority is to make sure that the government can get a deal here because it does impact on Australian jobs and Australian industry, and want to make sure that we can provide every support, particularly in a difficult period at the moment where, like a lot of businesses, the industry is really doing it tough. So hopefully Kevin Rudd and the Trade Minister and the Prime Minister have been on the phones and engaging with their counterparts in the United States to make sure that we can get a deal done, because we have a trading surplus with the United States and it would be unjust for these tariffs to be applied, and I hope that the government's done the work to bring about the change.
So when you see one of yours, admittedly, I think he's called you names, but one of yours going on national TV and saying, are we going to see a conga line of sycophants creeping through the White House, talking about Trump, saying we're sucking up to a bully? What do you say to that today?
Well, part of the problem as well is that, you've got Kevin Rudd who's made all these disparaging remarks. The Prime Minister himself has said that he was scared of Donald Trump. I just don't think any of that matters. I think what matters is Australian
this morning,
jobs.
though. What do you think of Turnbull's comments made last night on the ABC?
Well, firstly, I don't agree with the analysis of Malcolm's time as leader, first point. Second point is I think that the most important aspect now is not on the tit for tat, it's on how we preserve Australian jobs, and that's really in the hands of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has the responsibility, as Malcolm Turnbull did when he was Prime Minister, to negotiate with the then Trump administration for an exemption to the tariffs. The most important thing to me is to make sure that we can get the jobs, that we can keep the industry here, because we need steel manufacturing in our country for many reasons. And I think the Prime Minister needs to frankly roll his sleeves up and get this deal done so that workers' jobs and the economic activity can be preserved.
Is Turnbull harming that, though? Would you pick up the phone today and say, listen, back off?
No, Nat, as I say, I just think you can park all of that to one side and people can have the tit for tat.
Trump's
the most important thing that we need to concentrate on.
When Turnbull talked on Bloomberg, Trump hit back. So Trump doesn't feel that it's just someone talking in the background, does he?
No, but I think the most important thing is for the Prime Minister to pick the phone up and speak with the President, and for the Trade Minister to speak to his counterpart, and for the Treasurer to speak to his counterpart, and for the Foreign Minister to speak to her counterpart. They're the important discussions going on, or that should be going on at the moment, because without those discussions we won't get an exemption from the trade tariff, and we should. And I think that's in the hands of the Prime Minister at the moment, and instead of squibbing it, the PM's got to step up to the plate and start dealing with the realities and make sure that Australia is exempt from this tariff.
OK, just finally, news poll data released today shows 83% of Aussies want governments to be spending on the cost of living. You've said before Labor has been fuelling the inflation crisis. This shows people don't care. They want governments spending money. They don't care that it's fuelled inflation, that it may have fuelled interest rates. Are you going to change the way you campaign now?
No, we're not, Nat. The fact is that governments splashing out money lead to very bad consequences, and I think Australians instinctively know that. I understand the desire for people to pocket a few $100s, but that's no good if the government's jacking your electricity price up by $1,000. So we need to get inflation out of the system, because it's not just about mortgages, it's also inflation and the government's reckless energy policy, which is making groceries more expensive and making insurance more expensive, and gas and electricity and rents. And we need to remove that inflation from the system, because it's a killer, and it takes away part of every dollar that you earn without you doing anything or spending anything. And the fact is that we have to manage the economy successfully, and if we do that we can provide the medium and longer term relief for families. But at the moment Labor will always tax and spend, and when they run out of money, they just jack taxes up further, and that hurts families. So we've got to be the adults in the room. The Labor Party can be the kids at the party, but we have to make sure that we can help families, not hurt them, which is exactly what the government has done over the last few years. They've made economic decisions which have made it less certain for our businesses. 27,000 small businesses have collapsed over the last 2.5 years. And those people have lost their homes and lost their livelihoods.
Speaking of the parties, just to wrap up, you've copped criticism for flying out of Queensland just ahead of Cyclone Alfred's arrival to attend a fundraiser in Sydney with billionaire Justin Hems. Do you think that was a good idea in hindsight?
Well, we've got a fundraiser. I don't have the millions of dollars coming from the CFMEU and the other unions, and the Prime Minister attends fundraisers. I'd prefer not. I'd be much happier with public funding, but that's the way in which the rules are written at the moment. I went to a briefing in Brisbane on Monday, which provided details of what was due to happen on Thursday and Friday of last week. I went to a briefing on Tuesday morning with the Premier. I went to Sydney on Tuesday morning after that briefing, and I came back on the first flight on Wednesday. And obviously the event that took place with Cyclone Alfred happened on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and still the aftermath, as you can see behind me now. So I wasn't absent from my community, and I just think the fact that Jim Chalmers and Anthony Albanese are looking for political advantage at the time of a natural disaster reflects more poorly on them than anyone, I would have thought.
Okay. Mr Dutton, we thank you very much for your time today.